Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley, pay-per-view numbers. Where should we begin? All right. So reports come out today. Phil, you know what I'm talking about. Reports come out today. The fight between Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley did less than 65,000 buys. That would be much less than the first time they fought. Oh, and by the way, the first time they fought was on like a Sunday. Now, I can only tell you how I felt about this. I was more interested in part two. I can also tell you the history of combat sports, the rematch always does better than the prequel. So it was a little bit of a surprise. Why do you guys think it missed? Because you're the ones it missed with. Like, whatever you feel inside, you could literally give me the answer. If you did not watch it and you did watch the first. If you were not interested in this fight, but you were interested in the first, was it just the day issue? Did you think the Paul's fight on Sunday? Because that has happened, as weird as that is. I missed Paul versus Mayweather because I got ready to watch it. Now, this is the other Paul, but Mayweather. I had an argument with a young wrestler of mine named Cole. I was arguing the fight's on tonight. And he goes, no, Chael, you're wrong. It's on tomorrow. But tonight, as I was saying, it was Saturday, and he's telling me it's on a Sunday. It's like, Cole, nobody boxes on a Sunday. But they did. I was wrong. Is it as simple as that? That would seem like a little bit too easy, a little bit too obvious, and we would be letting them off the hook. But there is something to what I'm saying. I generally have my thumb in the same place as you guys. I was more interested in the rematch. And I'm also right when I tell you, generally, the rematch does better than the first one. Okay, why did this do 65,000? Question by me. Also, I talked with a guy at the UFC one time, and he helps with the numbers and he helps with analytics, but in his spare time, he's in a band. And he told me, he goes, Chael, sometimes at my band, I get to play to 500 people. Sometimes I get to play to 5,000. I don't know. I do everything the same, regardless of the crowd. Different things come up. But you plan your business around it. And as simple as that sounds, the brilliance is within the simplicity of the statement. So what do you do if you're Paul, where you are going to be judged on what you did last? I mean, that is the entertainment model. You could take a great actor from Hollywood. He's going to get his quote the next time he asks, as long as his last project did well. Even if the project he's getting his quote on, which is coming up next, sucks. If the director sucks and the script sucks and everything about it is bad, he will get his quote based on what he did last time. So what do you do with Paul? Because Paul is a star. I don't really care about that 65,000 number in the least. I don't know anybody in boxing that I'm personally more interested in, and I'm sure that's not a literal statement. Sure, if you have, Chael, what about Tyson Fury? But I think you understand my point. I don't come across any more headlines anywhere, and I'm just in the MMA space. I'm the junkies, the manias, the elbows, the fightings, right? I don't see any other boxer discuss more than I do Paul. Maybe in the boxing side of things, maybe I'm a little bit left out. But Paul has fully embraced MMA, and he's also nonstop going after Dana's guys. Why? And you can't just dismiss Paul. Anything he does is very calculated. And nobody in boxing history, we've seen it in MMA, it's very rare. But we have seen guys that come over with an allure. Brock Lesnar comes to mind, CM Punk comes to mind, James Toney comes to mind. Doesn't matter how they're going to do, they have a base that they bring with them. You don't have to start from square one and build up. They come with a base. Okay, great. Paul did that, but he did it in the world of boxing. And as you start to look at that and you start to wonder where he's going to go, I would just encourage you to understand there is a plan and it is calculated, but he continues to take a car and run it into the same wall over and over again, which is calling out Dana's guys, which is not going to happen for a number of reasons. But you don't have to list them. You don't got to get your fingers out and start listing the reasons. One, contract. That's all you got to say. Dana's guys are under contract with Dana. The end. There's nothing else to talk about here. Paul knows that. Paul's not thinking I can get under Dana's skin. I can do just enough to just drive him crazy and make him send one of these guys. It's not going to happen. Dana's not going to do him the favor, and he's not interested, and it has nothing to do with Paul, Showtime, or anybody else. Dana has never done that. His policy is very simple. It's very straightforward, but it's also very consistent. It goes back to 2005. He does not send his guys to go over and do something that involves a strike. If they would like to go grapple, you go right ahead. I mean, the policy's always been in place. It's been extremely consistent. Why does Paul keep doing it? I don't think that you got to put on your Columbo rain jacket to figure this out because he gets a response. It's been very good for business. Boxers don't always respond. Some of them think the greatest response is to brush somebody off. If you brush somebody off, Paul has no reason to call you out. Paul is looking for headlines. He's great at getting them. He gets them from the MMA guys. He gets a conversation. He gets a dialogue. He gets people in leadership positions to say and speak and come back. Very simple, very basic. But you also have a bigger question of where does Paul go from here? As much as people that just want to see Paul fail are going to say, well, go fight a boxer. And then I also hear Paul, I'm a little annoyed, I must tell you. I'm a little annoyed that nobody will give Paul a pat on the back and just simply say, good job. 2 words, shut your mouth. You do it for everybody else that goes out there, takes that risk, works hard, sacrifices, and has victory. You tell them good job, right? It's not that complex, and it irritates me that nobody wants to tell Paul good job. I heard a complaint earlier today that had to do with the fact that Paul calls out smaller fighters, that Paul has a size advantage. I've never seen him on the scale. I know that they weigh in. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen like the weigh-in show or followed that close enough, but I would agree as I watch the face-offs or I watch him stand and use T. Wood by example, it looks like that Paul is meaningfully bigger. I don't know. I still dismiss it because the hardest guy to box is a guy smaller than you. It can be helpful in a wrestling situation. It's unhelpful in a striking situation. If you look at Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion of the world, he was 198 pounds. If you look at Mike Tyson in his prime, 220 pounds. Neither Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson ever fought guys that were bigger. They were bigger. They were always smaller, which made them faster, made them get to the target, kept their conditioning up. It's just a tough thing to do. I will also concede right back to you that size does matter. If you can land a shot, it's going to hurt more. And if you take a shot, it's not going to hurt as bad. The size difference is for Logan Paul, why he was able to go so long with Floyd Mayweather. He didn't outbox him. He got outboxed. But he could take those shots. I get it. And Floyd had to be very respectful of his hammers coming down. I get it. It's not all a wash. I'm just not sure why we're always so quick to dismiss Paul. And if you want to be on the boring side of things and say, well, Paul should bite a boxer, tell me one. Because I've heard a number of people say it. I've heard a number of smart people say it. People whose opinions I respect as you do mine. But they use the same word. I am quoting right now, he should fight a boxer. That's a quote. That is a quote said by everybody that wants to bury Paul. Not one goddamn person has said a name. And the reason is you don't know him. Boxing has done a terrible job. Boxers do a terrible job with the self-promotion. They look at Paul and they're jealous instead of looking at Paul and going, my goodness, this is what I need to do. This is what I should be doing. We can just keep throwing out the term a boxer. We can say it till we're blue in the face, or we can tell the truth. We don't know who they are. We don't even know what that weight class is called. We don't even know what Paul weighs. And once we figure out what he weighs, there's so many weight categories in boxing, we don't know what it means. And not to mention, they leave them all the time. They're separated by 3.5 pounds. We don't have categories and divisions. We don't have ranking systems of any level of validity. We don't know who a boxer is. We don't know where we should go. And the only one with any courage is people that are coming in that aren't within the sport. I mean, you got to give Nate Robinson, you've got to give Ben Askren, you have to give Tyron Woodley credit for having the courage to go in there and do it. The fellow boxers, there is such a stigma that Jake Paul can't box. They're not going to risk it. You had Will Fury pulled out of the fight. That had nothing to do with anything other than an absolute panic, which you knew that he had. That's okay. I'm not teasing Will Fury, by the way. I'm sharing with you that it's very real. There's a lot on the line. Floyd had to deal with this when he went in there and boxed with Conor. It's a big deal. Floyd is the greatest of all time. He's 50-0 against a guy who's never done it. It should have never been sanctioned. Nobody else in the history of modern day government oversight has ever been sanctioned with a 50-fight gap before. But they did it. And just think about what was on Floyd's back, and then Floyd found himself in a very hard contest. So it just makes you wonder, you don't want to be the guy, so we can continue to say, a boxer. But until you have an answer, let's do it Paul's way. Because Paul has an actual name to throw at you. He has actual suggestions. Whether they get anywhere or not, they get headlines. They get us talking. They get an emotion. They get things built up. All part of the sport. The driving forces of the sport. The left and the right hand and the body shots and the hooks do not drive the sport. The stories do. Paul creates a story. Who, what, when, where, and why. Does it every time, never misses. Gets as many headlines, squeezes that dry, and moves on to the next one and stays in the headlines. He's doing everything right. We don't want to give him credit. Fine, don't give him the credit. If you don't want him to fight MMA guys, make a suggestion. But if you ever find yourself saying he needs to fight a boxer, you need to be real fair and understand you don't know what you're saying. If you have a name, an actual name, and you have a reason why, well, this guy's not in the top 10, but he's very promising and he could use an opportunity and he's pretty good on the microphone. I think that Paul would like him. I think they could do some business. He's got some notoriety. His social media is pretty good. He could hold his own at a press conference. I mean, there's things that Paul's looking for. He's not looking to get his ass kicked. That's where the silliness comes from. I'll put him in there with Mike Tyson. There's other things that they're trying to do. So be real fair when you come up with your answer, and I would love to hear what it is. I'm very open to the idea. I'm just also reminding you, if you ever find your answer being a boxer, it means you don't have an idea.